Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of album openers looking at the first track, or in some cases, first couple of tracks of an album. And yesterday I made the incorrect statement that all week we're only going to be looking at single track openers. And, of course I had to completely overlook that today we have a double track. We're opening up Enter Shikari's A Flash Flood of Color. This album starts off with the track System, which is just under 2 minutes long, and goes into Meltdown at 3.5 minutes, more of a proper length for that. So let's dive into this, see what's going on with Enter Shikari and System Meltdown. Lots of syncopation. We have the drone in the background, but these are strings, right?
There was a house in a field on the side of a cliff, and the waves crashing below were just said to be a myth. So they ignored the warnings from the ships in the docks. Now the house on the cliff is the wreckage on the rocks. There was a house in a field on the side of a cliff, and the waves crashing below were just said to be a myth. So they ignored the warnings from the ships in the docks. Now the house on the cliff is the wreckage on the rocks. Nothing can fix the building's flawed foundation. The scaffolding and stilts were the laws and legislation. This house was doomed, but they didn't care. They'd invested in the system that was beyond repair. When I was little, I dressed up as an astronaut and explored outer space. I dressed up as a superhero and ran about the place. I dressed up as a fireman and rescued those in need. I dressed up as a doctor and cured every disease. It was crystal clear to me back then that the only problems that I could face
very interesting transition there.
That affect us all. But of course this sense of common existence was sucked out of me in an instant. As though from birth I could walk, but I was forced to crawl. So this is such an exciting time to be alive. Our generation's gotta fight to survive. It's in your hands now. The future, our future, our future. Your future.
Keeping that syncopated part from the strings, but on a clearly electronic sound here.
This is gonna change everything. This is gonna change everything. This is gonna change everything. Meltdown.
Oh yeah. Nice little pop punk here. Yeah, dude, all of the syncopation and then the catchiest vocal hooks. How can you not smile to this? This is such a good time. Dude, this is so good. A massive synth tone.
Fear begins to vanish when we realize that countries are just lines drawn in the sand with a stick.
Oh, jeez. One of these days, I got to get into this band. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in the past, though we haven't had Enter Shikari on the channel in a while. So I don't know when I would have even brought this up. Maybe during a live stream. I am right on the fringe of understanding this band. I've listened to Zonked and some music video where they're on a boat and he just shouts, "This is the voice of God." I don't remember what that song's called, but that chorus will always be stuck in my head. I love their mix of like punky energy and honestly, it's that late 2000s, early 2010s sound of electronic music. It's the break beats and a little bit of the US dubstep stuff going on in there. It's just a really fun, infectious time that brings about the angst of punk with the danceability and positivity of electronic music. And I love this combination of them. I listened to some of their later albums and they just didn't click as much. I think it was like a 2021 or 2022 album I listened to of theirs. It just didn't have all of this energy from their earlier stuff that I gravitate to them for. It wasn't a bad album, just not what I was seeking. But this being 2012, I don't know where the other two tracks come from. So I got to do a deep dive into the earlier stuff. But I mean, if this is how you kick an album off, I'm all over this. I need to check out the rest of A Flash Flood of Color. I don't know if you could tell, I was having a blast up here. Looking at the tracks on this, yeah, I don't recognize any of these. But they have some fun titles, definitely in the punk realm of naming things. Warm smiles do not make you welcome here. Like, that's so core-coded it isn't funny. I got to check them out, though. This is good stuff. Let's dig into it. System. System is a string quartet track, in a sense. I don't know how strongly it would hold up with just the string quartet part, but it features all of the best parts of what string quartets typically have, which is melodic counterpoint, interesting harmonies, and rhythmic ideas. Sharp juxtaposition of syncopation in order to create more movement than you would expect from 4 acoustic instruments. And it has all of that. Like, this is a really solid string quartet ostinato, or a riff if you're from the metal realm, or a loop if you're from the electronic realm. Ostinato is just a shorter idea that gets played over and over and over. And that's what happens here. This isn't a fully developed string quartet idea, but it is one or two concepts that work really well. I would have loved to see this expanded into a full work of art. But as it stands, it is the background energy for a short 2-minute long intro track that sets up energy while creating an atmosphere for spoken word delivery. A story of sorts is told on top of all of this. Now, I actually really dig this too. I had mentioned that what I really enjoy about them is their punk electronic mix. I had never even thought that they would play around with classical too, but apparently they do, and I'm here for it because this classical electronic combo was very cool. But as I said, it really is set dressing. It puts the atmosphere together, establishes the energy and emotions, and I think most of this is putting a spotlight on the vocals here, as there is almost a full 2 minutes of some sort of story being told with escalating and ramping up energy. The vocals become more present, more focused, more body to them. Eventually there's compression put on them as we enter the realm of Fry screaming. It ramps up, and not a lot of that ramping up comes from the music. We do include some more layers. I think we bring in some sort of, if I remember correctly, some sort of percussion at the end to help amplify things up. But for the most part, the string section, it's kind of static throughout here. It does its thing, it sets the mood, but it doesn't evolve or change or move into another idea. We do have one little dip here where we bring the energy down momentarily into something a little bit more vulnerable, but we, just as quickly as it comes in, washes that away with also very interesting. It is a sound that comes from one side, goes to the other while also raising in volume. So it sounds kind of like the sonic version of a crossfade. Not like the concept of a crossfade, but like what if a crossfade was something that musically happened, almost like a scene wipe in film where you're erasing one side and replacing it with the next scene. It's really interesting because it's not literally what a crossfade does, but it also sounds like the concept of cross. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's how I hear it though. It's bizarre. I loved it though. It was a cool little trick there. Almost as if we got to this moment and we were like, nah, dude, what are we doing here? Let's, we don't need that. Head off stage right there, and let's do something else here. Let's get back to what we were doing. And I thought that was pretty neat. Also gave us a little bit of a dip, so we had some shaping to the track and some contrast as well. Granted, it's 2 minutes. It doesn't need contrast. It's an intro to something else, so it's actually even more cool that they decided to do that at all. And I may end up going back to that moment when I check the lyrics out to see why they specifically dropped the energy for that, opposed to the other vocal segments. That takes us to Meltdown, though. Meltdown is... this is it. This is the punk electronic stuff that I love. It's so high energy. There's the beats coming from the drums. There's the energy coming from the timbres of all of the instruments. There's the guitars, just massive, distorted sounds pushing the energy forward. There's the shouted vocals. There's the yelled vocals. There's the screamed vocals. There's the beautiful melody. All of this is done with a catchy element that you would find from pop punk. And it just comes together into this incredibly dancey, energetic earworm. I mentioned that it's quite difficult not to smile while listening to this. Maybe y'all absolutely could. You took that challenge to heart and you sat there stone-faced at the video, disproving me. And you know what? Good for you, dude. But that is a fun track. I couldn't stop smiling. I loved every moment of that. I found it difficult to stand still, not to groove with it. And honestly, I might have engaged with it a bit more casually than critically, simply because my brain was just like, I want to have fun, dude. Why are we thinking about this so hard? Just dance. Dopamine. Enjoy it. And I love that about it, but it's also intense. The way that ideas are interwoven, the complexity of the rhythmic ideas, the syncopation going on, how all of these different instruments interlock with each other rhythmically and harmonically, how the different melodies bounce around the sound sphere, how the sounds evolve. There's the entire electronic angle of what sounds are they adding here? How do the sounds evolve and change? What about the little ornamental things going on at the side? It is a track full of tiny nuanced decisions to amplify the power and emotional efficacy of the track. I don't really have a lot of emotional deep dive of how this song made me feel and the emotional journey I had throughout it. Like, I was fun. I had fun. I was dancing. Maybe if I gave it a second listen and really focused on it, I might be able to understand if there's another layer to some of this, maybe some sort of hidden sadness or angst or elation or something that I didn't pick up on the surface level, but that's what I got on this first time, is just fun and joy throughout all of this. The catchiness of the hooks, dude. How? The song is so chaotic, and yet the vocal parts just cut through all that with the catchiest ideas, and you just kind of forget about all the wild syncopation going on in here, the polyrhythmic stuff between all the different instruments and all the noises and sounds, and you're just like, yeah, dude, I'm locked into these voices. They're helping guide me through this chaos. It's just so well done. And once again, escalation. The end of this track is bigger than the opening. We even have variation on both of our final sections being parts that we had explored earlier, but heavier, wider, larger, more deeply layered this time around. Something to make it feel like a peak for the end of the track. This is right up my alley. And it's just another reminder that I need to dig into their older works. Let me hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Interestingly, despite System being the shorter track, it actually has the denser lyrics. Whereas while Meltdown has a lot of vocal parts to it, it only has a handful of lyrical ideas that are repeated over and over and over. System is about a system that is broken, originally showcased through the metaphor of a house in a field on the side of a cliff. The waves crashing below were said to just be a myth, so they ignored the warnings from the ships and the docks. Now the house on the cliff is the wreckage on the rocks. It talks about this house, and no one believed in the warnings about this whole house. Oh, the ships just come in and crash underneath it, destroying the foundation, and the house crumbles down as well. It says nothing could fix the building's flawed foundation. The scaffolding and stilts were the laws and regulations. This house was doomed, but they didn't care. They'd invested in the system that was beyond repair. And this is where the metaphor starts to bleed into what they're really talking about, which seems to be some sort of, system that was in place for whatever they're talking about here. They mention laws and legislations. The fact that it's a house might be a house of government. It says, though, that there is a sunk cost fallacy, that they poured so much money into this that they continued to do so even as it was pointed out that it didn't work. We then shift to the lower energy section. It says, when I was little, I dressed up as an astronaut and explored outer space as a superhero and ran about the place as a fireman and rescued those in need as a doctor and cured every disease. The core thread being here that this person as a child wanted to help people. They wanted to be the superhero, save people, or the doctor and cure diseases, or the fireman and rescue those in need, always wanted to help those around them. But out of this, as that memory gets erased and we come back to the heavy part, well, heavy subjectively, It says it was crystal clear to me back then that the only problems that I could face would be the problems that affect us all. But of course, this sense of common existence was sucked out of me in an instant, as though from birth I could walk, but I was forced to crawl. It basically says I was incredibly sympathetic as a child. Everything I wanted to do was in the service of the greater good. But as I grew up, that was removed from me. He says, as if I could walk when I was born and forced to crawl. I could have been better, and my environment made me worse. Says it's an exciting time to be alive, and our generation's got to fight. It's in our hands now. It's our future. So this song seems to point towards some issues in the way that society is run, maybe from a legislative or political side of things, and that the only direction they see ahead of them is to simply fight for a better future, one with a stronger foundation on it, and hopefully one where people don't disbelieve realities and call them myths that cause really necessary elements to come crashing down. Which takes us to Meltdown. This one, as I mentioned, doesn't say a lot. It says this is going to change everything, system meltdown. Stand up, how are we going to get through this alive? It's not too late. That's repeated over and over and over. We also have the line, countries are just lines drawn in the sand. That's repeated multiple times in here. Inside the sick foundation, we've had the realization. Then we also have the angsty section, fuck the borders, fuck the boundaries, fuck the flags and nationalities. You've got to give us a chance before we reach the system meltdown. And that's every line of this. Most of them repeated multiple times. It is a rallying song, not necessarily one to say things with a lot of depth. I think System took care of that. This is the one that has the catchy couplets. Is that what they're called? Two-line poetry, couplets, right? I don't know why I second guessed that. This one has the catchy lines in it, though. It has the simple rhyming parts, and it just sounds cool. It gets a lot of people to listen to it. The message isn't as deep, but it does pull people together. But it does have a little bit of deviation at the end, which I really like. It says that we need to begin to learn to smile again and start to walk that extra mile again. Yeah. More so probably today than in 2012. Happiness is just something people aren't accustomed to for whatever reason. There's so many things that divide us these days. But anger seems to be the state that everyone is left in, and we do need to smile more. I'm glad this song put a smile on my face. But it says we need to walk that extra mile again. I think part of this is the idea of going the distance, putting the extra work and effort in for things that we're proud of. But I wonder also if, because of the ideas of, countries are just lines drawn in the sand, and something we're going to look at in a second, this isn't about walking a mile in someone else's shoes, which is an old analogy that honestly I don't hear too often anymore, but it's about gaining the perspective of other people, not judging them until you understand them, until you've been in their shoes, and until you've walked that mile. I feel like that one's stretching it just a little bit, but I do think that it is supported a little bit because there is a line right at the very end of this track that says, fear begins to vanish when we realize that countries are just lines drawn in the sand with a stick. This idea that when we realize that we're all humans, we are all the same, there's nothing that divides us. Not where we were born, not where we grew up, not the color of our skin, none of that. We are all humans. And once we realize that and we can remove that division, that dividing line, it's easier to understand other people's perspectives. And I think that's where I find a little support for my read on the walking the extra mile line. But it's basically a song that says the system has failed us. There's other systems that are failing us. We need to come together to correct them for our future. And we is not just us in this city. It's not just us in this country. It is us as a human race. Everyone who has a future ahead of them on this planet, which should be everyone, needs to come together to fix it. And that there's too many dividing lines, mentally, emotionally, physically, in the sense that we have, country divisions and stuff like that. Not necessarily a physical, wall between countries, but the gist that we do have these ideas of identity that separate us. We need to get past all that and realize that we're in this together. We're not a bunch of small groups of people. We are 8 billion on this planet, and we need to stop being at each other's throats about it. I like that. It's a bit on the shallower side, particularly because, like I said, I think it's more of an amping up kind of song than one for deep philosophy. But it works as a bit of a yin and yang thing. System and Meltdown doing two totally different things that balance each other out. I really enjoyed this. I gotta dive more into this. Also, that track that I listened to previously, I had mentioned Zonked and then another one on a boat. That one was called Hoodwinker. And that is a solid track. All right, those are my thoughts on Enter Shikari's System Meltdown. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on it? Let me know. Put that stuff and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.